All right, we're gonna try it again tonight. Look, happen. Things get out of control. Sometimes the mute button trumps everything. So you didn't hear anything in the broadcast. But we're gonna do it again. In today's digital age, we got information absolutely everywhere. There's a staggering amount of information that's in front of us. We have all sorts of paper. We were promised many, many years ago that everything was going to be digitized and that computers were going to solve the paper problem. But look, here's the reality: the paper problem still exists. And in my world, I think it's actually gotten worse because not only do I have to deal with the paper that comes in the mailbox and all of the documents and everything else, but now I've got an inbox full of emails to deal with as well. And sometimes it feels really just overwhelming. And what can we do about the problem? Well, look, document intelligence is a real thing, and we can use these practices of information management to really transform how we are existing in a hybrid digital paper world. And one of the cool things that's happened is AI has really helped us to solve the problem. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. We've had companies working on technology to do things like optical character recognition for a very, very long time. In fact, really, from the very early days of computers, we've had people get excited about how they can turn the paper into digital value. And that journey continues today with AI. And it's actually getting to be a better story because we're at a point today where so much of our world is already digitized. The ability to take the information and extract value from it, especially once it's in the computer, has dramatically accelerated. But we still have all sorts of unstructured data that is really everywhere around us. And every organization has to deal with this problem. I have to deal with it every day when I come home and check the mail. But there are ways that we can leverage this technology to improve the productivity. I want to show you a very practical and simple way to do that just by using the tools that are readily available to you and I right now. We have this incredible pace of evolution that's happening. I'm not covering any AI news today specifically in the broadcast, but every day there is a new announcement of an AI model or an AI tool that is here to help us to solve some of the problems with managing the sheer volume of information. And the reality is, you can use any of those tools to make your situation better if you can understand exactly what it is that you're trying to do. So, the first question I wanted to ask that's really relevant to the discussion is, when is the last time you had a bunch of information that was on the page and you needed to get access to that information? Or perhaps you need to collect that information from someone. Every day there is information changing hands, and in various places, it may or may not be easier. But you also have to consider what happens after that information is collected, because it may not be as simple as just collecting it on a page. Once you collect the information, you have to do something useful with it. And that means we have to consider not just the collection of that information, but what we're going to do with it once we get it. Well, you can bet that there is a stack of pages somewhere that someone has to contend with. All businesses deal with a massive load of information, and organizing and collecting that information in a useful way is a major challenge. Now, we've been developing applications for a very long time, and leveraging applications to both collect that information, sort that information, and really help us to manage it is something that we've really benefited from. I mean, you just look over the last couple of years with everything we've had with the global pandemic. We've tried to digitize as much as possible, but there are still things that rely on good old paper. And there's some real value to the utility that paper provides. That's ultimately why we haven't gotten rid of it. In fact, we continue to use solutions once we find value in them, and paper is still something that we deal with. The thing about using paper to collect information is it's really cringeworthy the amount of manual data entry that's necessary once we collect something on paper. And we have optical character recognition, and those processes have continued to improve over a very long time. And in fact, the very early experience I had with artificial intelligence was trying to sort through and understand characters, particularly handwritten characters, and converting that as a function of optical character recognition. Now, I don't have experience working with OCR from the very early days, but my very early experiences with AI was trying to understand how we could interpolate the position of a black mark on a white page to distinguish a character. And that has actually gotten dramatically better over the last couple of years. In fact, one of the really exciting things about AI is it's able to not only discern the characters, but give you a value of confidence in what it has actually captured. And the secret is that this is available to you and I right now, today. It's a very low effort capability. You don't even have to have an expensive computer to run it locally. Any of the available free solutions allow you to take a picture of a form or a handwritten note and upload that image, and it will actually extract information from it. And I've done this a number of times. In fact, it's April, and I spent quite a bit of time doing tax related submissions to Uncle Sam this month. And I'll be honest, I used AI to help with this problem for me, having it interpret the information that was in multiple documents that I needed to decipher and use as a reference in completing my tax forms. I was able to actually take a picture, a straight up image of a document, and hand that to a large language model and ask it questions. And it was able to extract information from those documents and put it into a form that I can use for doing calculations, or more clearly documenting the core facts and information that was a part of my tax return. And this is the reality that we have today. What's really great about the advent of these large language models that are visual capable, like GPT-4, you can use that with ChatGPT. You can leverage Google's Gemini, as well as the Copilot implementation that Microsoft has. I'm running a Windows PC, and I've got Copilot running in the taskbar tray. I actually hit the microphone button multiple times a day and ask it a question instead of even typing it out. But you can upload an image to that system and ask it questions about what you've uploaded, be that a picture or a document, and it will give you useful insights directly from what you've handed it. So we can build very simple capabilities for ourselves with the commodity, openly available large language models today. And I'll bet you a significant amount of wager that you have a lot of documents in your house or in your office that you've been keeping around because they have value on them. So, what I want to ask is, do you have papers that you're keeping because they have vital information? Have you thought about digitizing those? And if you've been putting it off, it may be time to consider that with the advent of these large language models, you can actually not only scan in that information, but convert it to reliable, sourced documentation for whatever it is that you want to do. And I'll bet you that for whatever reason you're keeping that information around, it's probably more valuable if you can actually use it to drive insights and create information. Once you're able to digitize that information, you can set the model loose on not only taking that information and converting it to digital, but once it's digitized, you can actually glean insights by having it do analysis on that information. That's what these models are for. And I've experienced this in my own personal life. I've been playing with Google Gemini for the last couple of months because they opened it up and gave it away for free for a couple of months. I signed up for it, and I've been able to use it in my workspace with my email, with
all of the information that I already have in Google. The last time I looked at it, the data said that Google handles something like 80% of the email traffic in the US. And so being able to plug in an AI to look at my email, just the email, has been a really valuable thing for me. And I demonstrated that in the early days of Gemini, but I continue to play with it and find ways to apply it to what I'm doing. It's very useful to me. And one of the things that I've been able to do with it is, instead of actually looking at the inbox and trying to figure out what messages are important here, I'm able to go and use Gemini and say, is there anything important in my inbox that I might have missed that I really need to deal with right away? Now, how can you know if that's 100% effective without going through every email message? Well, I'll just be honest and say it can't. There has to be some amount of confirmation. But when I ran that earlier today, it found a message that I, in fact, had not responded to and had not seen. So it surfaced something that was relevant and important, and I was able to respond to that email and actually give an answer back to somebody. And I would have missed that message were it not for the help of AI. When we think about messages, when we think about email, that really is the quintessential unstructured data, because there's something useful that we can glean from that information, but it doesn't lend itself to automation that we have already in place today. That's just one of the ways that doing document management is a really valuable capability of AI. And when you're able to couple the sheer volume of processing information structured with the existing computer processes that we have today, even before AI, with the capability of AI to look at that unstructured information, wow, there's huge opportunities available to us. So what I want to take the rest of the time tonight to talk to you about is, what are the ways that we can actually apply this to whatever it is that we need to do? Because there is a particular practice that we can use. And I spent quite a bit of time earlier this year developing the mistakes framework exactly for this purpose. And if you haven't already seen the mistakes framework, here it is. I took the idea of mistakes and I built a framework that basically allowed me to understand a problem, find solutions to the problem, put together a prototype of that, and determine if it's effective. And this has been a really valuable tool for me in not only figuring out what I need to do for myself and my own operations, but also in helping others to execute their transformational journey. Because the reality is, if you're not creating value quickly, you probably haven't taken the right course of action. So the very first step in the mistakes framework is this idea of mapping the problem. We're going to identify the problem area. We're going to think about user needs and the context of that. We're going to think about, in our own minds, this idea of a map. And what are we going to do with the idea of a map? We're going to look at the environment surrounding us. We're going to find ways that we can leverage what we have available to us to improve our situation to really solve the problem. And one of the quintessential ways that we can do that is to start small and focused. When you think about the idea of a map, the very first question you have to ask yourself is, where am I? And so the mental picture I want to give you is, start where you are. Wherever your 2 feet are standing, that is the best place for you to start and think about what it is that you need to do. Often we're in a position that reveals some pain or some difficulty that we're experiencing. And if you can identify something useful that you're already doing that lends itself to AI or automation, that is absolutely the best place to start. I see so many technology projects that have gone astray because they tried to tackle something big, but the real value for the organization was already something that they were doing today that they needed to do. And if you can speed up, be more productive or more effective at doing the things that you're already doing, you can really extract some value very quickly. And look, everybody's got paperwork that they have to deal with on some level. Even if it's just the package that comes in the door, usually there's a packaging slip on the box or in the box that tells you everything that got shipped in the order. So things like dealing with invoice processing or collecting information as you're exchanging physical goods, that's a real thing that we all do. And so the sooner we can identify a pain point around something that we're already doing, we can get started and focus on that in order to derive maximum value. And as we begin to identify, is this thing that we're doing actually giving us tangible benefits that are realizable? We can leverage that feedback loop to drive what we do next. And when we find something of value, we can build on top of it to build momentum and increase how much effect that change is making. Now, when we think about this idea of the map as we're applying the model, we're using the mistakes framework, we're moving into investigating all of the solutions that might be able to help us to solve the problem, and then we're sketching it out. So much of modern technology is the opportunity to apply something that someone else has already put together. And so, what we need to think about as we go into solving the problem is there a tool already built that can help us to do this really well? Maybe it's something we can just go out and buy and apply. And in my case, that's a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic Claude. And look, I'll just be honest, I continue to use multiple different AI tools because each of them works slightly differently. Yes, they use many things in common, but the way that they work and the information that they have access to is dramatically different. And so I am using multiple different tools to give me what I need and make me more efficient. And you have to really choose the right tool for the job because sometimes one tool doesn't really work very well with the work that you're doing. I'll give you a good example. I post on social media pretty regularly, and I'm always trying to collect my thoughts and share that with the world in a meaningful way. And that often means that I'm taking the ideas that I have and I'm plugging them into an AI tool to really hone the idea or improve it or just get clarity on what my thinking is in a way that doesn't create a distraction for the reader. Well, if I go into a tool like ChatGPT and I'm telling it I want to create a post about something, if I'm asking a question and it's giving me details, almost always there's some information that is bolded in the output. Now, it's using something called Markdown to render that. And these AI engines are actually very good at understanding Markdown. But if you take that as a raw output and you paste that into, for example, LinkedIn, you're going to get some asterisks that surround the bolded text, and it doesn't look good. And it's just not useful. It's actually distracting. Instead of improving the message, it makes it worse. So if you can have a tool that in the stream will allow you to leverage AI to improve the writing, make the process better, and get out of your way, then that's a much better solution. And for me, that tool is Grammarly because I'm able to just go to the box and type in my thoughts. And when I'm done typing, I can switch over to Grammarly. It's going to highlight the things that aren't right. I can right click, look at the suggestion, take it, and it's working right where I am. It's embedded in the workflow. It comes to where I am. And that's what's really useful about a tool like Grammarly. It brings the AI and it integrates very well into the process that I'm already working with. So if we look for tools that we can leverage and bring into the processes that we're already using, that's where the maximum value is going to be. And that's what brings me to the next point, because not all AI is going to make things better. And the moment that we assume that just giving it to AI is going to improve it is really an AI mistake. Today, because of the maturity of the solutions and because of the complexity of our human existence, it just makes a lot of sense to develop these programs that combine AI and human capabilities so that you're getting the best possible result every time you do something. And this is where I really have to come in and tell you, I really am concerned with how often I see that organizations are wholesale replacing people with AI. It's not a good idea. It's not going to turn out well across the board. There are going to be problems. And we also have to recognize that you may have a standard operating procedure for something. And while you could hand that off to an AI, there are things that didn't make it into that procedure. There are problems that you cannot foresee. I know this. I've spent almost 30 years doing automation, and really strange things happen. You have to put in a circuit breaker. You have to give yourself an out. You have to find a way to interrupt a process because strange things are going to happen. And if you need a story to help understand that, we've had it for a very long time. When I was a kid, I got to see Disney's Fantasia, and they, in many colors, presented the story of Mickey as the sorcerer's apprentice. It's a really great story, and it's a lesson that we all have to learn. And I'm afraid that we're going to have to learn this lesson again. See, here's the truth: AI and automation are already friends. We've been developing AI technology for literal decades. Historically speaking, AI has disappeared into the background, and we don't call it AI once it's really working, but it is a form of artificial intelligence even before we start to talk about things like large language models. I would consider the autopilot in an airplane to be a form of artificial intelligence because it does something in the stead of a human in order to help them. And we've talked about this. Nicholas Carr wrote an excellent book, probably well over a decade ago now, called The Glass Cage. And in this book, which I strongly recommend for anybody that's working in automation or trying to find ways to apply AI to produce value, it talks about what happened in the aviation industry as autopilot became an imperative. We started to create rules and requirements that took the controls away from the pilot. In fact, there were even some very specific situations where the pilots were mandated to enable the autopilot and no longer fly the plane manually because it was more efficient for the autopilot to do it. And the problem that that created was we became reliant upon the autopilot. And unfortunately, and in a few very tragic situations, when the pilot did need to take over because there was a real problem and the autopilot could not handle it, the pilot lacked the control. The pilot lacked the skill set or the response or the reaction necessary to bring that bad situation under control. Now, we've recovered from that in the aviation space, but we don't need to learn this lesson multiple times. We already have everything that we need to know, and we find ourselves at a very unique moment. Now, this is a quote I took directly from the book, and he's talking about Thomas Hughes and how Thomas Hughes has really defined the problem. And this is a direct quote from Hughes that Nicholas Carr used in the book that I thought was particularly relevant and really quite useful in this domain of understanding where we are with technology. Technological momentum is this concept of an early development, an opportunity where the technology is still malleable, where we can do things with it to make it fit better into society, into our lives, into the way that we use it. And what I want as the call to action to all of those of you that are watching right now is to think about what it means to use this technology in a much more human way. What do I mean? I mean, let's not do technology for technology's sake. Let's not get overly enthusiastic about, wow, look at all this cool AI stuff and I want to play with it, to thinking about the humans that are involved. If we can keep the human at the center of everything we do, that's going to be the right answer. I mean, after all, that's what we're here to do. Now, for those of you that are really into science and technology, there's often some things that are associated with that particular worldview. I'm kind of an outlier in that regard. I really think that it's all about the humans, because I'm a man of faith. I believe that we were created and that we're here to care for each other and love each other, to do things for each other, and to enjoy our existence. And we can't do that unless we focus on each other. We have this habit of getting a shiny object and wanting to do everything with it. It's a human habit to really take things to the extreme. And you can take things to the extreme with virtually anything and everything that a human works with. But if we are thinking about how we do our work and considering the people that are involved in that process, I guarantee you the results are going to be tremendously better. So the takeaway for today is to think about how we can use what we're learning to make the experience better for people. Look, if we can take the approach of improving our skills, learning from what we're doing, being lean in how we're applying what we learn, and using experimentation to find the right things to do, we're going to have a better outcome. And that's ultimately why I started AI Mistakes. It's leveraging this mistakes process to identify the right thing, to identify the wrong thing, and constantly improve on what we do. And if we're constantly evaluating, if we're constantly thinking about how can we make this better, how can this be a better journey for the humans that are involved, I know the outcome is going to be dramatically improved. So I want to challenge you today, as you're thinking about how you're managing your documents, as you're thinking about how you can improve processes and workflows and really make it a profitable enterprise, whatever it is that you're doing. It's possible to use this great technology that we have in AI, but we must put the humans first. We must think about what we can do for ourselves to make our lives better and the lives better of those that are around us. I hope you're having a great time watching the broadcast. I'd love to hear from you if you're enjoying this. If you have something that's very interesting that you'd like to talk about or learn more about, I'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, go make some mistakes. Use the framework. Take advantage of the opportunity to learn and grow, experiment, and find the right answer each and every day. Go make some AI mistakes. We'll see you next time.